Good afternoon. Welcome to the live stream formerly known as Agile.Gov live stream. As you may have seen on the cover screen just a second ago, we're renaming this live stream 30 to 80. We've renamed our accelerator program that we run for people in government working to improve digital services 30 to 80, both because we've decided that's a better description of what we do, working to help people chart the course to delivering the expected return on investment for technology projects, 80% or more of the time. Today, the industry average is somewhere below 30%. And we want to change that. We also realized after the last live stream, this sort of namespace collision with a company that is named Agile.Gov, and people were confusing us with them, and that's not helpful to anyone. So we wish them the best, and hopefully this will be clearer for everybody. So with that, I'm really excited to go ahead and kick off our fourth live stream. Today we have someone who I'm really excited to introduce here, and the first of what will hopefully be many conversations with leaders of different state digital service teams. More and more digital service teams are cropping up across the United States, which I'm so happy to see. And I've been so fascinated to see how different digital service programs are from state to state. Every state has its own unique context, has its own origin story, and in some ways we're all very similar, and in some ways people are doing different things. And so that means there are a lot of stories to share and a lot of different opportunities to learn about what's working and what we can try to replicate in different places. So with that, I'm going to bring on Max Geigel, who is leading Connecticut Digital Services. And Max, I wonder if you can go ahead and get us started today by telling us a little bit about yourself, a little bit about Connecticut Digital Services, and then I've got so many questions I'm really excited to ask you.
Absolutely. Brian, thank you so much for having me here. I'm actually really honored to be able to represent Connecticut's progress in digital here. And I'm looking forward to the conversation. I appreciate it. So just by way of introduction, my name is Max Geigel. I lead Connecticut's digital practice here in the state. Our team is a central delivery team, specifically focused on helping agencies deliver better products and understanding the resident experience beyond it. There's a lot we can talk about the program, how we've built, and I know we've got a large program. My role specifically, just for context, is to help understand and drive the strategy, partnerships, any kind of marketing, working with leadership on reporting some of the outcomes and helping our delivery teams move forward. The team, again, we'll probably get more into the team itself, but there's a number of other managers much smarter than me thinking about delivering products and driving success with agencies across the enterprise. And of course, there's a number of leaders here in state that are also very interested in seeing government services progress and improve here in the state. So, thank you.
Great. So Max, I wonder, there's so many things we could talk about. I thought that we would focus our attention today on a few success stories and sort of work backwards from those into lessons learned and how does the organization actually work. You all started with something of a bang with a big announcement from your governor, and my understanding is that your first project was a great success. So I wonder if we could just start with the origin story of Connecticut Digital Services and the first big project.
Yes, absolutely. Thanks, Brian. Okay, so roughly about 5 years ago, well, it happened, the lead, as with every big bang, there's always a large lead up to it. Before 5 years ago, the legislature and the new governor at the time, now Governor Ned Lamont, had the idea of improving resident services holistically around resident need. We had to start with some kind of persona. And so we thought about, what do entrepreneurs need here in the state? So, in addition to a number of other change and improvement initiatives, our digital team was created to help think about what that resident experience might look like, what do agencies need from their digital services, and start to revise the experience around it and help agencies do so. Our team was created. We were a small team at the time. Our initial maturity was around standards, and we had some design and content expertise, a little bit of product, but really we're here to bring agencies' perspective together to build these enterprise products. And that's where we started with Business.CT.Gov. So the idea was, previously and still today, agencies supply services. And when it comes to a web presence, they're usually served up in an agency lens, right? You can go to a department of XYZ and you'll see their services provided to the resident. What we found through research there at the beginning of our journey, but also throughout subsequent projects, is that the resident sees government as kind of a whole entity and expects common communication, common standards, just like an experience that doesn't change so much from agency to agency. And in this instance, they would like to see their services served up by who they are and meeting them where they are. Not just common accessibility and language, but also along the lines of what their needs are. So for entrepreneurs, which is where the state started thinking about revising this experience, we created this website called Business.CT.Gov. The simple idea is that if you're an entrepreneur in the state of Connecticut and need to work with the state, you can understand what those services are in one place. There is a transactional and non-transactional element to it. The front face, everybody can go to Business.CT.Gov and find all of these services that we worked with agencies to understand and prioritize in this on the website. But we also understood that when a resident becomes an entrepreneur and wants to open their doors as a business, that they also have a difficult time navigating what we call a resident journey. So most agencies and probably in government in general will see their service provision by the bounds of the agency that they're in. And that's wonderful. I think Connecticut serves up their services excellently. The resident oftentimes will see that their experience goes from agency to agency to agency. So, for example, if an entrepreneur wants to open the doors of their business, depending on the kind of business, they might have to work with between 8 and 20 agencies in the state of Connecticut. And at the time, there was no specific and clear guide. Where do they start? Where do they go next? What do they have to do? What kind of documentation do they need? So there's a transactional element to Business.CT.Gov where an entrepreneur in Connecticut or elsewhere, if they're going to do business in Connecticut, can understand all the steps that they might need in order to open their doors, the full resident journey. It's a navigational tool. Specifically, you cannot, transact with different all the different services in this signed-in experience. But the goal is to provide this as an opportunity to agencies in case they'd like to. And we actually did have one taker on this. So the Secretary of State's office, who has a lot of volume registering businesses over time, decided to invest in the solution themselves and rebuilt their business registration system in the same shared experience. So if you're an entrepreneur and you're walking through this process, you can now do so in a recognizable and way. And we do have plenty of analytics to show that entrepreneurs are both using the tool, and it also improves the Secretary of State's tool. So nevertheless, this is where we started. Short story. This is where we started. And it launched within 6 months. We had our team grew throughout that process, and we worked with outside vendor partners to deliver the solution. And since then, we've iterated and improved alongside agencies interested in, floating their services in such an experience.
Great. Okay, so many things I want to ask you about it. So I'm actually going to bring up a slide. I was going through the white paper that you shared with me, and there are just so many great nuggets there. So we got a couple great quotes from your governor as the site is getting off the ground. Connecticut wants to be the first all-digital government, wants Business.CT.Gov to be a one-stop shop for everything. People should be, online, not waiting in line. Love that line. And I guess if we could take one small step back to drill in a little bit more into this pain point that I thought was so interesting here, and then jump back ahead to the success stories you were just starting to dip your toes into. So there was this part of the white paper that says, we learned the state's disparate support models increased single points of failure, inequity of service, and content consumption, and help desk volume. I wonder if you could just like bring to life a little bit more this problem, like single points of failure, inequity of service. Can you just like paint a sort of human experience picture for us of like what was broken that you all fixed?
Yes, definitely.
I think I remember reading like 23. Did people navigate up to 23 websites
They
at the beginning
did.
of this?
So it was actually quite fascinating to walk through the process of understanding the agency's business as they served up entrepreneurs in this space. Every agency over time had developed a well-oiled, relatively, system of serving up the service that pertains to that agency. So whether it's registering a business, whether it's the licenses, whether it's understanding how to work with unions or staffing or funding, every agency had provided these for a while and provided a wealth of information to us about how the agency provides them to entrepreneurs. At the same time, we went out across the state and sat down with entrepreneurs in their bakeries, in their home offices, at the place where they're doing business, brick and mortars, and asked them, "What's your experience across the entire state?" And we learned not a different story, but a different perspective on the same story. That while one step of the process might be clear and understandable, it's not the whole process of opening your doors is not terribly understandable for entrepreneurs that are looking to, open the doors of their business. Even beyond that, right? An entrepreneur's engagement with the state doesn't stop with opening your doors. You have folks that are, especially during COVID, trying to sustain their business or sell their business or just hire staff or close their business, whatever it might be. There's a number of scenarios that an entrepreneur might find themselves in that the state can provide assistance for sure. We have found a good amount of lessons specific, and I think to your question, Brian, we tried to focus on ones that had the highest impact for entrepreneurs. And so when we built Business.CT.Gov and learned lessons that have been integrating these in future projects, we really understood residents to want that their information should be tailored to them, right? They needed the right information. They needed those services to speak the language that they understand, not just languages in English or Spanish or other languages, but do you, the state, understand my needs as a business owner in this sector, right? Healthcare or restaurant or whatever it might be. They wanted the state to meet them and grow with them and their business, again, to match their needs. They wanted the state to connect with them as an entrepreneur who was navigating their own space, utilizing government as a partner in their success. And we built all our tools, business specifically, around those elements of what a resident might want and need. And we've gone on to do that with other service categories like health, folks that need a healthier and safer life, and utilize government services to do so, or jobs, job seekers and employers looking to connect and kind of change career paths. And you can find jobs.ct.gov and health.ct.gov out there live, ready to go. To your question about like impact on the state specifically, we did see that when, let's say, an entrepreneur comes into the door of an agency and they expect one kind of service to be provided them, and that's not what the agency provides, there is, beyond confusion, there is this process of trying to route the person to the agency where they might need to go, or the program, trying to get people. And so we did find that agencies were spending a good amount of time just routing, right? Trying to get the right information to the people, like serve the public as best as possible, that oftentimes didn't have anything to do with the services that the agency itself was providing. And so standing up a business checklist for an entrepreneur before they even step through the doors of any specific agency, to walk through, give a little bit of information to this checklist on who they are and what they want to do with their business, will allow the entrepreneur to save time, not just for themselves, but also for the agency that's providing the services. The whole goal of digital, I mean, there's many goals of digital, but one of them is to think about how can we save time so we can go focus on what's more important or more complex for agencies, right? All those agencies that spent a good amount of time answering the simple questions now don't have to in a certain way, generally speaking, and now can focus on the needs of their consumers that are more difficult, more timely, that are just as important.
Great. So before we bring in a couple questions here, I do want to share one more detail from the white paper, because behind the scenes, there was so much happening to bring Business.CT.Gov to life. So this is an image that I saw in the white paper describing, on the left, the old process. 4 different of the many websites that people might go to register their business. 4 of them, at least, had separate logins, separate user accounts, separate processes, separate web properties. All of that has been consolidated on the right here to this single experience, single website. You still have 4 different agencies in the background of all of that. Beneath that business one-stop description. It takes a lot of buy-in. It takes a lot of coordination to go from the image on the left to the image on the right. Can you tell us what had to happen behind the scenes? Bring to life a little bit the behind the scenes evolution from the left to the right. How did you get the buy-in? Was it easy? Was it hard? What did you learn about going from the left to the right, out of public view, bringing this experience into existence?
It wasn't a new lesson by any means, but the agencies are the service providers, right? They are the ones that serve up these services to entrepreneurs and for this purpose. And they needed to be there along the way for us, all of us, to get it right. So at the beginning, we had the concept, which was really a concept around digital in addition to a project, right? We were testing out the theory. Do residents want to navigate state services by how they conceptualize their needs versus how government wants to serve up, by agency silo, if you will. So we presented the concept to the commissioners at different agencies at the time, as well as the buy-in from leadership to approach this whole initiative, Business.CT.Gov, but also digital government. And got the buy-in from agencies to join us, to give us their business expertise and delivery expertise, even beyond that, to think about creating Business.CT.Gov. And throughout the 6-month delivery project, leaned heavily on their expertise, agencies, the Secretary of State, Revenue Service, Labor, Consumer Protection, and other partners, to build the necessary business logic into Business.CT.Gov. There's a very tactical aspect that was necessary from the agencies, but there's also, once it was launched, there's an ownership that's needed as well, right? The concept that now an agency has multiple places where they're serving up content about their services, and that Business.CT.Gov, not being owned solely by any specific agency, has to be maintained over time as well. So our team internally, while we're mainly a delivery team, have been maintaining and operating Business.CT.Gov. It's been in conjunction with all the agencies that when they are getting when we're getting questions about kind of some of the content that might be stale, like how do we get the details, the business knowledge once again, in order to update the website and make sure it's accurate on behalf of the agencies who this tool is serving.
Great. Why don't we, I'm going to resist the urge to jump in and ask questions. And why don't we give folks who've tuned in a chance to ask questions here? Let's see if we can pull some up on the screen. I'd love to understand if or how customer relationship management fits into this model.
Oh, that is a great question. Maybe a plant somewhere. Who asked that?
That one is definitely not planted. I'm so curious. It does fit perfectly into where we're going. So go ahead.
It's key to this. You have to, as any central delivery team needs to understand their customers if they're going to get anything right, whether that customer is, in our case, the resident or the agency or even the enterprise. There's value for all three. So since the launch of Business.CT.Gov, we have gone on to do several more service categories and have a good amount more in the pipeline, and have learned and grown our maturity around working with agencies since then, right? I want to be mindful, the launch of Business.CT.Gov was almost 4 years ago at this point in time, right? And we've learned quite a bit since then about engaging with all the agencies that serve up. So today, in the state of Connecticut, we have a centralized IT model. There's a good amount of folks that spend a good amount of effort understanding each of the agency's needs. And I think we've been fairly successful as a state in thinking about how do we serve up agencies what they might need from technology in a shared model, and are continuing to grow in that way. So around each of our service category projects, we do have a group thinking about governance, thinking about how do we bring together these agencies in a regular fashion? How do we plan around their needs? How do we incorporate resident need gathered from research into the prioritization of the different aspects of the product and opportunities to grow and develop this tool that's serving both agencies and residents?
Can we talk a little bit about what's on the back end? Isn't there a CRM on the back end of Business.CT.Gov?
There is, yep. So the non-transactional parts is built in Sitecore. The state has a kind of a unified content management system for all non-transactional content. Most of the state's websites are built on that. There's also, we utilize Salesforce for the transactional elements of Business.CT.Gov. One of our products that we're pretty proud of here is the design system. Been honed over the many years on kind of what, not just kind of to provide a front face for the state, but also the accessibility needs for users and residents out there. Nevertheless, when you cruise from page to page to page in Business.CT.Gov, the goal is for it to be seamless and you not to understand when you go from Sitecore to Salesforce or any other tools that are using there. There's also a number of other tools that handle the signed-in experience, as well as any data transfers and pulls within the service center experience that's behind the front face.
So on the topic of customer relationship management, when you say that Salesforce is where you're storing transactional data, are the different agencies using Salesforce as a CRM? Do different agencies have access to CRM capabilities in Salesforce, or is it not being used in that way?
Interesting. So I guess I'm only here to speak about the service center that's behind Business.CT.Gov. Mm-hmm. As a tool, Salesforce is available to any agency that would like to use it. There are other folks outside the digital program, but inside BITS that help agencies see what the opportunities are to improve their own business and really digital services utilizing the tool of Salesforce. Now, for the service center itself, it's a capability, right? On one side, it's serving up a unique experience, an individual seamless experience for residents that want to transact with any state services that are built in by agencies into this service center. But it's also an ability, opportunity for agencies who, if you would like to be you would like your services to be in a common space, visually, design-wise, then you can utilize the technology behind it to float your services, whether it's the pulling data out of your services into a dashboard experience, whether it is navigating folks from this central service center to a state service hosted elsewhere, or like the Secretary of State, completely rebuilding in Salesforce and having the designed experience right there in the service center itself.
Got it. Okay. So is the Salesforce instance is it effectively the Secretary of State's instance of Salesforce? Is that right? The right way to think about it?
Yeah, that's the right. So the Secretary of State's office maintains and operates their business registration tool within Salesforce. And the visual experience, Salesforce itself, and the dashboard that surrounds that tool is maintained and operated by a central IT team here in the
Got it.
Bureau of IT Services
Got it.
or Solutions.
So maybe that's a good segue. I'm going to keep taking us a little bit deeper into implementation and behind the scenes. There were a couple other notes in the white paper. So here's another slide I'll pull up just to share an excerpt. The vision going into the platform was a single low-code platform with enterprise tools for any integrating agencies. I wonder if you could just talk about to what extent this platform has lived up to this vision. It was envisioned to be a low-code platform. Are you using it as a low-code platform? There's a vision for integrating agencies, to get some value out of this as a platform, it sounds like. What can you tell us about that and how that has played out?
What I've personally learned over the past 4 years is that low code is a subjective term. So I'll say there's complexities using Salesforce like any other tool. And we have spent the past 4 years navigating how to improve our delivery practice utilizing it, right? I don't think I'm so long on the tooth to understand, delivery 30, 40 years ago in comparison. But what I am to understand is that utilizing SaaS solutions like platform as a services, these are simpler and easier to develop. Now, I'm also not a developer by any means, but I can tell you that our development team has kind of found benefit in the configurable solutions within Salesforce and other SaaS solutions. And we found them useful in standing up capabilities for agencies more quickly than in the past.
Got it. Your digital services team can surely only support so many different technologies. Do you have people in-house who configure Salesforce, who write Salesforce code, or do you have a vendor partner that is working with you? How does that happen?
Yes, and so generally speaking, state of Connecticut is, or at least BITS, is looking to bring in the ability to support our own technologies internally. We have found that it is sometimes difficult to be held to outside vendors if they are wholly maintaining and operating solutions. And so our team and in BITS, we've been doing our best to bring in the skill sets needed to continue to grow and improve the tools that kind of all state digital tools are based on. We found tools like Salesforce and others to be simpler because it is, due to this quote unquote low code nature of it, it is a little easier to get spun up, although that's not the case for, I think, all tools. For Business.CT.Gov and for our service center specifically, we do have folks internal to BITS, our bureau, that can maintain and operate the Salesforce, usage of Salesforce that supports the common experience. But we're also growing a workforce that can help agencies utilize more capabilities and build out more capabilities. That being said, right, we've got plenty of vendors and partners that are also providing us with what's next, right? What is the strategy behind this? How can we architect and construct an easier maintainable system, not just with Salesforce, but with our whole tech stack? And we've got folks within our bureau actively thinking about the architecture and improving upon the technology and maybe even swapping technology over time as the environment behind technology changes, which, as everybody here probably knows, is fast.
Great. What have you learned about maintenance? There are a lot of people now who interact with Business.CT.Gov. Even though we've talked about it a couple times now, I'm not totally sure who owns which parts of the system. Who owns which parts of maintenance? How does maintenance happen? And are there lessons learned from this project that you're bringing forward to other projects as turning your attention to health.ct.gov, jobs.ct.gov, and other grand plans?
Yeah. There's a lot that I and other people on our team could share about this. I think if there were just going to be one lesson that I've learned from this experience, it's that in order to be successful long-term, you have to plan for maintenance. which probably sounds obvious to most folks on the call, but I will say for governments, it's a lesson well heeded, I would think. So for maintenance and operations, we do have support teams for most of the technologies that make up, the one-stop experience found in Business.CT.Gov and Health and Jobs.CT.Gov or Chatbot and other tools that provide the singular experience. And they need to be invested over time, which takes planning, especially with government cycles of funding. One has to be just mindful that once an MVP goes live, somebody has to own it, or else it'll be outdated and less useful over time. Yeah, I mean, I could get into specifics, I suppose, but I think the main takeaway is definitely invest in it, or else over time you'll find that something else will replace it, or it won't be as useful to the constituents it's serving.
Mm-hmm. When you say, it's important to go into these projects planning for maintenance, I think some people hear maintenance and they think, this is like building a freeway and it's got all the exits it needs. And so, that's like one kind of maintenance. It's I think in technology, maybe like life support. What's the minimal amount we need to do? But we basically made the thing and the thing's not envisioned to change until some later date when there's like a major construction project. And then I think some people, certainly software developers, hear maintenance and potentially think of things like continuous improvement,
right,
and constant evolution. What does maintenance look like on this one? And as you're moving forward into other projects and having these maintenance conversations up front, is continuous improvement part of that conversation or not?
Well, it has to be, because everything's changing all the time, not just technology, right? So, decent example. We were halfway through our MVP initiative, less than halfway through, and COVID struck, right? We had done, X amount of months of research, and then suddenly, a third of the way through the project, the needs of entrepreneurs drastically changed, right? The need for iteration was necessary, right? One, if we were going to make a product useful, of course, right, we needed to include COVID services and direct people to immediate transactional services. In addition to that, right, there's also the public perception. If a tool goes live for entrepreneurs in the middle of a pandemic, not mentioning the pandemic, then is it really a tool for them, right? So there were multiple motivators for continuing to iterate. And this is an extreme one, as it's kind of born out of an emergency. I think for hopefully most of government services not born out of emergencies, there is real value to iterate over time as well, because people's needs do continue to change, right? People's life circumstances change, and who they are and how they transact with technology outside of the government changes drastically over time. We found real value in improving on Business.CT.Gov, but also iterating on the vision and the strategy behind it too, because how government pulls levers of change also kind of change over time as well. Like our ability to get work done, to build teams around the work, that changes. And I think probably every government is faced, whether it's political change or organizational change or funding changes due to so many different factors, have to adapt to what's in the realm of possible and match it with what are the changing needs that we're seeing on the resident side, right? Requiring everybody to be flexible, but to your point, iterative. There's iterative product delivery, and that's always useful too, to make sure that, instead of a multi-year project that may or may not be useful due to the different changing environment, you're also getting value much quicker, and can kind of think and improve on what you're seeing is working or not, right?
Mm-hmm.
Agile, if you will. But there's also, you wouldn't want to, I'll just keep it at that, right? There's so much more you can go into, and Brian, you're an expert on this, on understanding the value behind Agile as a delivery practice, but also around vision and just being flexible to the changing environment.
So as you're talking about continuous improvement, I'm picturing the slide we had up a minute ago that shows 4 different agencies that used to run their own websites with separate authenticated experiences. Going into the pandemic, all of them are still serving those different constituencies or the different parts of the journey. All of them are thinking the same thing you just described a minute ago. As new things are coming out, we better say something about the pandemic. They were all very involved in the initial go live. Have all of them stayed engaged? Do you have a long list of highly engaged agencies who are part of this continuous improvement conversation, putting requests into a roadmap, sort of negotiating about priorities? Or is it sort of a ghost town and you're sort of calling all the shots? Like, what does continuous improvement look like with a critical shared resource like this to all of the people outside of digital services?
Yeah, I mean, for all the government folks in the room, they probably know nothing stays the same for long. So our government governance takes active grooming, if you will. That's not the best word for it, but one has to invest in partnerships in order to get anything out of those partnerships. And so over time, we found that we have to continually engage those agencies to make sure that they understand that this is a tool for them that serves their constituents, right? And continually ask them, how would you like to find value in these tools? While at the same time, and this is just the way Connecticut does it, our team does it, is that we also have a research arm to go out and understand what are residents' changing needs and bring those insights back to agencies that might find those valuable in thinking about their programs, how they're serving their constituents and whatnot.
Great. I wonder if we should take a few questions and then change topics here. I'm going to zoom out and see if we can get a question up on the screen here. What would you tell someone who's evaluating the exact same technology stack?
Oh man, I'd probably connect them with our state architect. That's what I would do. I don't think I personally have any specific advice for such a broad array of tools. I personally believe in standardized technology stacks, and I know our state is evaluating all the technology that we have to make sure that the experience on both sides, right? The consumer using the tool, but also the folks that have to maintain and operate tool have a easier time utilizing, maintaining, or using the tools itself. For broad advice for someone who's evaluating the same tech stack, I assume the question is asking about Sitecore, Salesforce, ForgeRock, MuleSoft, and the variety of other tools that the state of Connecticut serves up. The advice would be no different than probably you'd find it elsewhere. Doing your homework and thinking about integration. I feel that in the next couple of years, there's going to be a lot of opportunities and changes in technology. And learning from other states' examples like we have done can be very valuable to you. So it's a good question. I'm sorry I can't be more specific. Again, there's other folks that can probably answer better, but nevertheless, yeah, that's where I'm at.
Great, thank you. Is this maintained with capital or operating funds, and who pays for it?
Great question. So the projects over time have been funded by both. So BITS has changed our funding model over time. When we started, this was as a governor's initiative, we were funded solely by capital, and some of the state staff driving the initiatives were funded by personal services. Over time, as licenses move from direct development to, I don't want to say legacy, but they're just like operating licenses. They're funded by an operating fund. We benefit from this funding through partnership with Office of Policy Management, the governor's team, even the legislature, as well as the agencies that want to join and invest their time and sometimes funds into the licensing and the staff needed to support the solutions within the experience.
Thanks. Mm-hmm. All right, in the interest of time, I'm going to try to steer our attention to a few other other stories. I know Robin, the chatbot, has been a great success, and there's also so much conversation about chatbots, swirling around the universe right now. Can you help us change directions and tell us a little bit about Robin? What the aspirations were for Connecticut's chatbot and the things that worked really well with that project.
Absolutely. So as we were going through, and after we launched Business.CT.Gov, we really heard loud and clear that the resident wants to be met on their own terms. In short, right? Speak my language, talk to me as if I'm a partner, that kind of deal. And at the time, 4 years ago, the concept of having a tool that anybody can access 24/7 to speak and share information about the services that someone might be that might need would be useful. So we worked with Salesforce and some partners in order to build a chatbot that is in enterprise development. At the time, we had not found other examples in the public sector of an enterprise chatbot. There's plenty of chat tools that are provided on agency government websites. And even in Connecticut, we had 1 or 2 agencies utilizing a chat experience. And for folks that are not familiar with chat, I only mean to say that when you go to a website, there is a piece of technology that you can prompt with words, and it will spit back information. This is, in essence, a search tool, but in a readable, understandable format. So we understood kind of some lessons that the agencies had gone through, and then constructed an enterprise bot. So in short, one bot for the entire state. At the time, and I think now it's probably safe to say that at the time it was called AI. In comparison to modern large language models, it's probably machine learning. Either way, the construction of it is, within that single chatbot, it took folks work to tag content built on websites into a specific single bot experience. And we still have folks maintaining and operating Robin, as we call the chatbot, to ensure that when people ask it a question in a different language, in idioms, whatever it might be, that the bot understands what's asked of it and that it's finding the right information. It takes people behind the scenes to make sure that the experience works.
I wonder if you can just say more about the behind the scenes work that it takes to make it work. I think everyone can relate to looking at a 1,000 page website and see, wow, it takes a lot of work to write all the content on those 1,000 pages. I don't think people have any idea the level of effort that goes into a good chatbot experience. Can you talk a little bit about what went into making Robin work well?
Yes, I can speak to Robin. Again, modern bots, chat experiences, completely different. The state is just starting to explore. I can't speak to that. I'll speak to Robin specifically. Yeah. So we have a small but mighty team of folks thinking and working with agencies to, first of all, prioritize what content on agencies' websites are useful to be served up in a chat experience. Again, you got to remember that, say you're on the Secretary of State's website and you had a question about Secretary of State content, you could navigate that web space right then and there, but also talk with Chatbot and it'll serve it up in a different format. Oftentimes people are like, well, I also have a question about DMV, or my driver's license, rather. The idea is that this chat experience can also say, okay, here's some information about the DMV while still being on the Secretary of State's website. On the other side, right, our team specifically is working with agencies like, what would you like to serve up to residents, and how do we make sure it's consumable in a format of a chat box on your website? For anybody that's navigated government websites, a lot of the content that you'll find on there, not easily consumable. For very good reason oftentimes, but nevertheless, if you're looking to create a chat experience, it has to be reformatted in some such. And depending on the model, right, some chat and AI will be able to do that for you. From our experience, we did have staff that went in there, rewrote some agency content, or at least made it a little bit more accessible and understandable, and then tied it to the chatbot. So when the chat experienced a prompt, it could search through, find the content that was most useful for that resident and serve it up. For logistics, just we have a handful of folks continuing to maintain this massive and growing tree, if you will, of connections between prompts and the content served up in the Insight Core or the state's CMS, and continue to do so as the bot gets smarter about the prompts, and in reality, our team continues to make it smarter and being able to understand the prompts better.
It sounds like maintaining a website. It sounds like the same level of effort and the same sort of operation goes into maintaining a chatbot. Is that the right way to sort of think about basic level of effort?
I suppose it depends on the type of content that's on the website. But it's similar work, I suppose. We have content writers that understand it. There's some integration folks included on our chat team, and we continue to bring in outside experts to make sure that we're up to speed with modern advances, I suppose, in that specific tool. But I will say, I guess I could boil it down to answer your question in that if any agency or government is looking to serve up their services in an understandable format, right, the effort of thinking about the content, the navigation, and serving up like a rewritten experience is similar between how to tie that content to a chatbot or representing a website.
Okay. All right. So jury's still out on in the post ChatGPT world if this gets easier, but making the content plain language requires hard work by somebody.
And requires humans too.
Yeah.
There's a big difference between translation and transcreation. And it takes humans to understand that today, anyway.
So all this effort goes into getting it up and running. And how do we know that this was such a success? What has the impact been?
Oh gosh, thanks for asking. Okay, so first of all, we certainly have the metrics to show that people are using chat experiences. They are telling us thank you for whatever information that's been served to them. They have a delightful experience with the state. So we know the residents are happy with the tool when they can access it. We are also, just full disclosure, we're also get plenty of folks that give it a one star rating, if you will, out of 5. And this is where we can continue to improve, right? And this kind of chat experience will always take continual grooming as people ask different questions, prompt it, we tie different content to it. And that's how the state improves Robin, if you will. More surprisingly, and we didn't exactly expect this, but this is now a real goal about our technology, is that we found that when residents get to ask simple questions of a chat tool that's available 24/7, they will not ask those questions of the state staff that traditionally have to do so. And so we've seen quite a bit of volume in various questions go down at the state agencies that serve up these questions in a verbal format or on the website. And it allows state staff to specifically refocus their time and efforts on, again, what's a little bit more complicated, more difficult, time that's a little bit more valuably. It also helps residents kind of navigate the state system a little bit better too, so that routing is done a little bit better, and just kind of helps folks all around in such a way. The last way is that it's a quantifiable tool, right? Such like search and analytics and whatnot. But when someone asks an agency a question, that there's a record of that, right? And an agency can then take those analytics and insights and reflect on their programs and how they provide their programs and use that information to their benefit.
Great. Does anyone say, are you trying to, AI is already coming for our jobs. Are you trying to replace my job here?
No. I can't, I don't think I've ever, after, I guess, 15 years now in government, I don't think I've ever met someone that said, we have enough people and enough money and enough time to do what we need. The chatbot is not by any means, or any technology that I guess we're serving, is meant to replace people. If anything, it's to help people do their jobs better and to think about and take away some of the rote tasks that don't need to be done or that are done often enough that technology can handle it. And then again, staff can go do something a little bit more complex or more valuable for their time.
Great. I'm looking at time. I think I might change the topic one more time so we can get another good story in here before we do a last round of questions. I'm going to pull up some screenshots again here and share the CT.Gov. I think these screenshots are examples of websites that have implemented the CT.Gov design system. Is that right?
The top left is not, but I do appreciate as actually a comparison here. Thank you.
Sure. Okay, so the top left is not, but then the other three are examples of websites that have implemented the design system?
That's correct.
Great. So, I looked at these websites and I thought, they sure look visually consistent. So the three of them, I was clearly right about that. I wonder if you can just sort of explain, what is a design system? What does it mean that you made one design system, it's been implemented on 3 websites, and talk a little bit about who's benefiting from this and what those benefits are.
Excellent. I'll see if I can do our lead designer any justice in the beautiful design system he's put together. Okay, so a couple things. Connecticut has a brand, and we have aligned to the governor and other agencies' thoughts on how do you present color, font, format, feeling, vibe to the general public through this design system, which is, again, colors and fonts, but also components within when it comes to digital technology, the components that make up a different website. Those standards help residents understand when they drop onto an agency website. It's like, okay, I generally know what I'm looking at here. I'm secure that this is a government website because I've seen this format and this presentation in other places, right? And they feel more comfortable engaging. We also have built this design system thinking about accessibility, right? How readable is the text? How much contrast is there between the colors? So folks with screen readers can actually engage in the content itself. How many languages are provided in order for folks that are, non-English speaking or English isn't their first language to be able to engage and understand the services that are due to them too. Our design system, broadly speaking, thinks about all of these elements. And so as we build them and help agencies engage in the design system and rework their content and designs with it, it helps a resident just kind of uptake tools that are, served up on there. I suppose there's a bit more I could probably share on the design system. Is there anything specific? Oh, you know what? I am going to highlight one thing. It's not just the design system, but there has been a bit of work understanding the users that navigate Connecticut's ecosystem and understanding their needs. And there is also a bit of work. It's a concept behind the design system that says, like, if you are going to be serving up these services, do so by the resident need. Brian, you shared shots of Business.CT.Gov and health and jobs. If you went to an agency website, you'd also see a changing experience. What it was before was, okay, if you need to find a service, you have to first find the team that provides it, navigate to their web space, and then you'd find how to transact with the service that's being provided. New websites are being developed in a way that when you go to an agency website, you'll be presented with, okay, are you a resident? Are you a homeowner? Are you a driver? Who are you? And here are the services that are being provided to you along the lines of your needs. Not necessarily traditionally a design system element, but it's a concept that drives our new development. And that the enterprise approach of thinking about who you are and how do we provide you the quickest route to what you need through agency experiences and enterprise experiences has helped us serve residents better.
Mm-hmm. What is it that is getting shared from product to product, from website to website? When you talk about providing this consistent orientation around who are you and what do you need? Is it you're providing documentation about user personas? Is it that you're providing recommended information architecture or a main menu to wrap around all the different websites? What is it that is changing the behavior of the people crafting RFPs and inventing these new projects, that's getting everyone to think about orienting around the end user in the way that you just described?
Oh gosh, that is a fantastic question, Brian. To synopsize it, all the above. So our central team certainly provides the research, and agencies have a great perspective on what their consumers need as well, right? And together, those can provide a lens and like, okay, if we're improving, what do we prioritize? How do we do so? There's also data shared, certainly in the transactional side. All the tools that the state provides is gathering data, forms gather data, and then even analytics on websites, right? If you can see how a person traverses a website, you can kind of see what their priorities are and their needs are in what's presented, right? That plenty of people drop off because they couldn't find what you need. And this is the value of research and actually asking people what they want. So that is absolutely shared and goes into product development here as well. But there's also policymakers thinking about, okay, how do we help not just enforce standards, but really help agencies see a wider lens around service provision, and how can we take advantage of thinking about the experience broader than, maybe what government traditionally did around, an agency or programmatic silo.
Great. I'm so tempted to ask one more question about policy, but I'm noticing the time and I want to make sure if anyone else has questions, we get to another round of questions. So I'm going to zoom out here and see if we can get a couple more questions up. Folks who are tuned in, please, in the last couple minutes here also, there's a bit.ly link for feedback. Would love to get some feedback on this conversation so we can keep making these a good use of everybody's time and learn more about what people are interested in. Here's a question. If you could have a redo, what would you do differently?
That's a multi-million-dollar question indeed. Your agencies have been endlessly valuable for these projects. We probably would have built governance committees earlier, I think. At the beginning of our maturity, we were given the charge to design around resident need, and we did so successfully. And then there was a period of time where we learned that an agency can also bring a perspective as well, in addition to the resident. And I think probably if our project team specifically, I know there were many people in BITS and broader around the state that were thinking about both at the same time. I think our project team probably could have brought agency perspective and resident perspective into the product life cycle sooner than later and have brought additional value.
That's such an interesting direction. When you said governance committee, I'm curious, Max, if you're talking about an aspirational idea for a committee that you intend to create on a next project that you've never actually seen in existence yet, or if it's, you've seen excellent governance committees and, you wish you had brought that kind of committee to, the first project you talked about or the second project that you worked on. Mm-hmm. Which one of those visions of a committee is it?
Neither. We had informal governance committees throughout the projects, but I think it'd be very useful to formalize them around domain spaces. So there could be a formal way for government domains to channel their needs and feedback into enterprise delivery.
Yeah, like an advisory board for the roadmap, or like
That's right.
a stakeholder group that sort of collaboratively owns the direction.
That's right.
Of the development. That's great. I love that. Okay, I think we're right at time. So, Max, I want to thank you so much. This has been an awesome conversation. Really fun talking to you. And I hope this is the first of many conversations with folks about different state digital service teams. Again, there's a bit.ly link at the bottom of the screen if folks could click that and give us some feedback or sign up to tune in for more of these. We can also share the white paper that I referenced earlier. So I think if you go to that link, we can shoot you an email with that. And thanks again. Really, really enjoyed this conversation, Max.
Brian, I really appreciated it too. Thank you. I'm looking forward to kind of watching the future ones and learning from other folks in your series. Thank you.